what's up, guys, and welcome to episode 21 of Mr. Millennial's Revenge. I'm your host, Nick DeMaria. Thanks for tuning in. On today's episode, I am so excited to share an interview I did with one of my absolute best friends, a longtime collaborator, and someone who, we've got Rodgers and Hammerstein. Well, we've got DeMaria and Kosiba. So on today's episode, we've got pianist and educator, Mr. Andrew Kosiba, and I mean it. Like, I first met Andy in 2007, and we have been musical partners ever since. He is a gentle soul, an incredible piano player, and a great friend. And we talk about remembering Chick Corea, who passed away last week at the age of 79. Real tragic loss there. We talk about how it was really surprising to see the news that Chick had passed, and not to say that it could have been expected. It's just, I say in the interview, it's just he would have been the last person I would have expected to so suddenly pass away. So this is a tribute episode to Chick and his music. So stay tuned for our discussion about our favorite tracks and the albums that got us into his music, and how vast his catalog was and is, and how I feel like I will still be discovering Chick Corea music the rest of my life. Before I forget, though, Mr. Millennial's Revenge is officially on Apple Podcasts. So, yay, I figured it out. What have I said before? The bar is low. So we are going to celebrate every single accomplishment here on Mr. Millennial's Revenge. But no, the podcast is officially now available on YouTube, as it's always been, and Apple Podcast. So if you like the show and you've been checking it out and staying with me, or if you're a new listener, please hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts. Feel free to add a review. That helps the podcast get more attention by more reviews. So if you've been listening, I'd really appreciate that, because this has become such a great project. It's really kept me focused, since the fall. Basically, after the period of time where outdoor gigs were kind of ending. I was able to gig through the summer, as much as anyone could, and I'm grateful for that. But once the fall came around and it was getting too cold, so the venues and even myself agreed, it wasn't going to work. So I needed something else. Created the podcast, and it's been a lot of fun. So please hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. Please leave a review. I know I can talk and run on sentences, so no need to add that, but any input is always greatly appreciated. And also, before I forget the housekeeping, Mr. Millennial's Revenge is a production of the New Haven Jazz Underground, which is a grassroots community-based organization dedicated to concerts, clinics, and jam sessions in the name of jazz in the great city of New Haven, Connecticut, the pizza capital of the world. Have you guys seen this shit? So there's like some I don't know, it's like New York Post bullshit or something, and they posted like the real pizza capitals or the real cities to go for pizza, and guess which city they unsurprisingly left off? New Haven. So somebody got super hurt. I'm sure their feelings were completely trampled, and wrote this article. And I'm sorry, but New Haven's pizza is better than New York. It's way better than anywhere else in the Northeast, and it's absolutely better than anywhere else in the country. So I'm going to start putting in the plug. The pizza capital of the world, New Haven, Connecticut. is where you can find the New Haven Jazz Underground. And we are crowdfunded, so please consider becoming a patron. You could do that at patreon.com/NHVJU and sign up for as low as $2. $2. You won't even miss it. You won't even know it's gone, but we could do so much with it. And what do we do with that money, you ask? Well, right now we have our Mind the Hang Jazz concert series. We just had a concert last week. We're planning March's concert. This is a free event that we broadcast from the LA Center of Contemporary Art every month, and we present a local jazz group and, do what we do. We go live on Facebook, on Instagram, and not only do we bring the music and keep the music alive to the audience, but we can, employ some musicians during this tough time. So please consider helping us keep those lights on, and go to patreon.com, sign up, and it's an automatic withdrawal from your account, and you won't even know it's gone because it's so low. But when a lot of people contribute, we get a lot of support. So thank you to our patrons, and please don't forget to become a patron at, one more time, patreon.com/NHVJU. And thank you for your support. So let's get to my interview with Andy, and I feel like he's going to get a little bit of an extra introduction because I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. So like I said before, I first met Andy in 2007. He was recommended to me by a mutual friend who was playing bass with me at the time. You could say my first working band. Andy was the first Rhodes player I had ever met, and I was like, oh my God, he plays the Fender Rhodes. Like, I thought this was so cool, And I think I hit him up on Facebook. That was like how I first messaged him. And this is 2007, and we bullshitted a little bit, talked about some of our favorite music, and I realized that we had a lot of mutual interests and stuff, and he was really into playing the Rhodes, man. Like he wanted to play that instrument, and I thought it was cool. It wasn't like he didn't bring a modern keyboard set to Rhodes. He was adamant about playing a Fender Rhodes. And back in those days, he used to drive a Chevy Impala that looked like the mid-2000s version of the Blues Brothers Mobile. And he would carry the Rhodes in the trunk of that car. And, man, great memories of that car, rolling up to gigs, putting helping him get the Rhodes onto the stage so we could play the set. And, fast forward to 2021, Andy has been there with me for pretty much every important musical event in my life. He's on almost, I think, all but one of my albums. He's always one to be open-minded about a composition and, try different ideas. And at this point, what I love is he's, there's like a formula to it. And it's funny, too, because, I was talking a few weeks ago about going to the studio. I went into the studio with Andy and Zwart, my other longtime collaborator, but then I had two newer guys on the project. And, during the rehearsal, something just wasn't quite working on one of the tunes, and then Andy and Zwart start talking and stuff. And they're like bantering back and forth while they're trying out ideas, and I'm cracking up because, for me, this is, business as usual. And I could see that the other guys were like, what? And I was like, look, we've been working together a long time. This is normal. There's no fighting. They're not really fighting, put it that way. But it's just my music could not sound the way it does if I didn't have Andy behind the piano or the the electric keyboard. And it's funny, man, our relationship, our friendship was built upon just playing gigs, but then over the years it's become something really special. And I'm glad to always play with him. I look forward to it, and making that new record was something I was really appreciating. And we got 2 more coming up this year, so that'll be something great to look forward to. Andy is a huge Herbie fan. As you can imagine, that would bring us together. Sometimes I'm in awe at his own style, which you hear the Herbie in it. But then on the bandstand, we'll be playing a tune a standard or something, and all of a sudden he breaks out that like Red Garland block chord soloing, and I'm smiling, I'm laughing because that's what I love about it. I love how versatile he is. He's always got open ears, and he's a good dude. I mean, what can I say? So when we heard the news of Chick Corea passing, I knew I had to get Andy on the show. I wanted to talk to Andy about Chick Corea's music. Andy is like a 70s fusion guru. He knows everything and anything about jazz in the 1970s. And we didn't get to it. The interview went long, but we are definitely going to have to get I'm going to have to get Andy back on the show so that we could just talk about our favorite 70s jazz albums. So stay tuned for that episode. So without further ado, here is my interview with pianist, keyboardist, and longtime collaborator, Mr. Andrew Kosiba. And joining me now via Zoom is pianist, keyboardist, and longtime collaborator, Mr. Andrew Kosiba. How you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty well.
How
are you, Nick?
I'm good, thanks. I'm so excited to have you on the show. I actually I asked you to be on the show right at the beginning, right when I wanted to start doing this, and you were very you were very polite about it. You were like, yeah, sure, have me on. But it seemed like, but when you got it figured out, and that just kind of cracked me up, because like then after the episode with Dave Scott, you were like, hey man, this sounds really great, let's do it. And I was like, yes, I've convinced people that this is like somewhat a professional production. So I'm really excited to have you here.
Well, let me say that I had no doubts about your own personal abilities to do this, and you've been doing a great job since you started. It was more just doubts of my own. This is like, to be honest, I'm more nervous doing this than I've been on any stage in my life. So I
don't be nervous.
Be much rather in front of some keys instead of this right now, but it's fun and it's interesting, and I mean, we're both educators, so we talk our minds for a living, but doing this is a new experience and it should be an interesting one, so thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm kidding, of course. Like I'm but I remember when I released the second episode, I was like so proud of myself that it's almost been like a diet in a way, where it's like, okay, day one, piece of cake, day two, okay, and like, by Friday you're already eating a whole pizza by yourself, and the equivalent of that would be like, I didn't make an episode for like a month. But so I guess because of COVID and not having anything really going on music wise, it's like these small victories of getting these episodes out have like kept me going, really. So, but it's funny. Do you feel you said you'd rather be behind the piano? Do you feel like the piano creates this like physical barrier between you and the audience? Like, do you have stage fright anymore? I mean, since you brought it up. I don't know if we lost Andy.
Yeah, well, I lost you.
Oh, no. All right, there's so much space I could probably edit it out. Let me start again. Can you hear me?
For now.
Okay. Do you feel with the piano, you were just saying, I wish I was sitting behind a piano. Do you feel like the piano gives you this physical barrier that helps with any kind of stage fright? Do you feel stage fright anymore when you play? Like, is it no big deal? But sitting behind the piano, does that help? You kind of have like a fence there in some ways.
Oh, absolutely, for sure. And then when you're speaking, moments of silence come across as lack of preparation, whereas often when you're playing piano or playing an instrument, moments of silence come across as leaving space. So sometimes can work to your advantage in that way. So right now I feel like I have to keep talking, whereas if I was at a piano, I would just shut up and listen to you. So let me do
Right.
that right now.
And everyone would like be like, "Oh, he's such a genius. Oh God, this guy's reinventing jazz." I do a lot of whisper stuff. It's kind of like Jim Gaffigan ripoff. But yeah. What was I gonna say? We were talking about oh, this is what I want to say. It's Mardi Gras. Did you know that? I just remembered like right before we started recording.
Didn't
Yeah,
even
that's
dawn on me, to be honest.
right. Well, I mean, Mardi Gras is not really a thing in Connecticut anyway, or in the Northeast. But the fact that another holiday has gone by and I really didn't notice is says something about the monotony of our lives right now.
Well, if there's anything about Mardi Gras, like any other holiday, but it's really pushed that everyone's really close together and doing silly shit and breathing all over each other. So, if there's anything that we should not be doing right now, I think that's probably on the top of the list. So, I'm glad that I forgot about it for this year at least, and hopefully
Sure.
other people did too.
I
But we
think
can bring it back next year, though, hopefully.
yeah, I think they canceled it this year, or it's not like what it normally is, but you know we'll see. Um, so the big news, man, and I didn't, you know, it sucks. I wanted to have you on the show for a long time, but now I get you on the show, and Chick Corea dies, man. Like I hope that's not too much of a bummer, but you know, I texted you the other day. I said, man, you got to be on the show now. We got to talk about Chick.
Yeah, we do. And it's it's so crazy to think about. I don't know if you've been paying attention to his Facebook feed at all, but for the past, few years or so, he's had like these online. He's had like this online lesson academy that he's had, and then he also puts out lots of free lessons on Facebook and just sort of life's experiences. He looks so healthy and good, and it was just one of those things like that I least expected. Really, it seemed to come so quick, and I think a lot of us were surprised, across the board.
Yeah, let me tell you, I feel like ever since David Bowie died in 2016, because if I remember correctly, he was the first death of 2016, and that was like it felt like it started this domino effect of famous artists dying. So, but it happened like right at the beginning of the year, if I'm not mistaken. So, if somebody had said to me at the at the end of 2020, oh, who's going to be the first big loss of 2021, I never would have guessed Chick Corea. Never in a million years. He wouldn't even have made the top 100 because just like what you said, he always just looked so healthy. And you know there's something to be said about that, because there was a time where he looked very unhealthy, and I'm not trying to body shame or anything, but I remember when Chick Corea came to college, that was like when he he did not look well. He was very overweight at the time, and I would have guessed that his time was limited back then, and that's like almost 20 years ago. And clearly he made like life changes and stuff, and he looked great. I was so surprised because I think he died at 79. He looked way healthier 2 weeks ago than he did when I met him in person. And so it just adds to the surprise, is what I'm trying to get across. Very
Oh, absolutely. And I was thinking the same thing. I saw a picture of him probably about when we saw him at school, and man, you're right. He looked he didn't look that well then. But I guess that goes to show you that looks can be deceiving, and we should always um, uh, make sure that the people that we know and the people that we care about aren't taken for granted at all.
yeah.
Matter of fact, I I mean, as you know, and maybe some of your audience does as well. I We both teach the around the middle school year kids, and so do I. And one of the lessons that I had was just to kind of get these kids to know about who this incredible musician was, because I think sometimes we as people that are in tune to jazz take for granted who these people are, whereas there's people that we know that aren't involved in the music that wouldn't know Chick Corea from anyone else, so I thought that was important to kind of bring some awareness to them, if only to show them that like there's people that you care about and really look up to that could be gone tomorrow. So I think that's
Yeah.
important for us all to remember. And there's actually, when I was doing that, I found a great program that was put on by the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra called Who is Chick? And it was just a really good way to retrospective way to kind of look at his life and who he was inspired by, and what made his music what it is today. And by some sort of musical osmosis, so too are we all inspired.
Yeah. Was that a recent Lincoln Center thing, or is that in tribute to his recent passing?
No, it was before his passing, so maybe a year or two ago.
Oh, okay. Like a
Um,
celebration
so
kind of
so
thing.
they spoke. Right, yeah, just getting kids to know who Chick Corea is. Unfortunately, um, it's become even that much more relevant today, just because we don't want these historic people to go down without being remembered.
Right.
And I think it's important that we're doing this right now and talking about who 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 influenced and who was so important to our growth as musicians and as people, really.
Yeah. Um what when did you first discover Chick? When did you when did you, cuz you're a pianist, so I would assume it was sooner than me. I'll tell my story, but how did you discover Chick Corea?
Well, that's interesting. Sort of by a back channel. Uh, when I was in high school, I had the pleasure of being in a band, jazz orchestra, high school band that was a lot more influenced by like 70s jazz and sort of that jazz rock style than like Duke Ellington, for example.
Yeah.
Um, he wasn't there at the time, but the former director had some personal relationship with Maynard Ferguson, so he had a lot of the original Maynard Ferguson charts that we um, played or attempted to, I guess. Um,
This was
and
your like high school jazz director, jazz teacher?
yes, well,
Wow.
it wasn't the director. It was the director who had retired a couple of years previously,
Uh-huh.
but the new director that came in also learned under him and kind of kept the curriculum mostly the same for a while.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
so including we had the unique opportunity to open up for the Maynard Ferguson Orchestra for a couple of years, or the Maynard Ferguson Big Bop Novu no Navo or
Yeah,
whatever it was.
Nouveau band. Yeah.
Yeah. So so anyway, we met at this little tiny back room in a restaurant that had a pretty big size stage, and um with a red solo cup in one hand, Maynard told us all about the crazy uh jazz life. And I was just remember being blown away by the sound of a band like that. I'd never heard anything like that in my life. And so I started looking more into the arrangements that we were playing, and one of them was a Chick Corea tune, La Fiesta. And I thought, man, I love this song. It's great. And I still do. I just didn't really know much about it at the time. And, so I got on the internet and dial up internet and searched La Fiesta jazz or something like that. And Chick Corea's version came up, and I thought, wow, I haven't heard this before. This is different. And that was really what introduced me to Chick Corea. Of course, on the original Maynard Ferguson version is a pianist, Alan Zavad, who was absolutely incredible in his own right. And if you have a chance to listen to the Rhodes solo on that original, on that big band version, it's really killer. Um but yeah, that's how I got introduced to Chick Corea. And I remember uh after that, shortly thereafter, I thought, well, I need to get some more of this stuff. So I logged into LimeWire or Napster or whatever. I think LimeWire by then,
Mm.
and just typed in Korea funk, or funk jazz or whatever, after a couple of Wikipedia searches. And the first song that I remember downloading from Chick Corea was from I think from Secret Agent, which came out in '78, called Fickle Funk. And that's just a really funky one. It's fun, and that I couldn't stop listening to that, and that's really what started me down the Chick Corea rabbit hole, so to speak. And but of course, it was more difficult in those times to just get music. You couldn't go on Spotify and
Oh, sure.
and just listen to every album at your fingertips. So I think after that, I don't recall exactly how what followed from that directly, but he was always then right on my mind all the time. I think after that I was distracted by Herbie Hancock for a while, but
Okay. Okay.
but
Yeah. It's funny.
during the young years.
Yeah. We'll get. I want to get into Maynard in a little bit, but let's focus on Chick. It's funny. I think about the first time I had heard the name Chick Corea was actually my freshman year in like marching band camp, because the marching band's field show the year before was My Spanish Heart by Chick Corea. And all the older kids were just like obsessed with, My Spanish Heart, My Spanish Heart. And it's been a long time since I listened to that album, but I remember like getting a copy of it somehow, like probably a burnt CD or something. And I didn't think much of it, because really all I knew was like the marching band arrangements of it. And I was too young. I was like 14. I was too young to realize like who he was. And, and if you look at the cover, like he's wearing like, this like Bolero's outfit or whatever, and I just thought it was so corny, and I just didn't give him a chance at all. And then fast forward, funny enough, when I was a senior, my jazz or my the assistant band director, who was the jazz director, he was able to get a history of jazz class in school. So I got to, it was like a semester course. I got to be like in the first class that took it, and it was my senior year of high school. So it was super cool. And we used this book. I got to ask a couple buddies of mine that maybe they will remember the guy who wrote it, but it was like your classic textbook that came with a CD that had all these examples, and there was a fusion section. And that's like where I discovered In a Silent Way and Bitches Brew and stuff. But I remember listening to the first Return to Forever album and liking Spain. You know what I mean? Like I feel like a lot of people who their first introduction to, especially people our age or younger, their first introduction to Chick Corea is Spain in some way, whether it's a big band arrangement or a history of jazz class, or required listening if you want to listen to jazz, a jazz band arrangement, all that kind of stuff. And it's funny, when I think back on that time, I was more into Weather Report at that time than Chick Corea. Like if I remember liking the song Birdland. So, and so I was listening to that track on this like history of jazz CD than anything else. And funny enough, that same year is when the Ken Burns Jazz documentary had come out. And I can't remember if they even mentioned Chick Corea in the fusion part. The fusion part of that documentary is like 5 minutes long on the last episode. And it's really brushed off because, it's like, it doesn't, the producers don't want to focus on that era at all. So they quickly, they mentioned Miles and fusion and stuff. And then they quickly transition to Dexter Gordon at the Village Vanguard in the late 70s. And then they talk about like the Young Lions movement of the 80s. So you don't even get that much. And I think what you do get, it's a lot of like Jackie McLean complaining about synthesizers. So, but yeah. But as a Miles fan, I grew to appreciate Chick Corea more, because actually Chick Corea is on a lot of my favorite Miles albums, Filet de Kilimanjaro and In a Silent Way and Bitches Brew. Um, you know, I was more of a Herbie guy, but Chick was kind of always there in some way. You know, I kind of never really thought about it until now.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that. A lot of what brought me into really liking Chick Corea was a lot of the things that brought me into getting into Herbie. And it took a certain maturity and some time and some experience with the music to understand and to really appreciate that other side of Chick, like you said, uh, Chick on In a Silent Way, or Chick on Bitches Brew, or Chick in even his own sessions that um, like we had mentioned, the Is sessions were
Oh yeah, we were
really
talking about
cool
that.
for us. Yeah. So I just wasn't really ready for that. So something like Fickle Funk, which if you told me that was a Herbie tune, I would have believed you. You know, that's something that hooked me on really quick. But there was a certain I feel like it took more time to really absorb all of Chick's library. And really I still am. Like, there's things that I
Oh
hear all
yeah,
the time that I'm like, why didn't I listen to that before, you know?
Chick's discography is incredibly overwhelming. Like
It is.
I really can't think of another musician whose output I probably will never finish. Keith Jarrett comes to mind as well. Although a lot of Keith Jarrett's records are like, you got the standards trio. So there's a lot of albums, but it's the same band, you know.
Mhm.
There's the solo performance stuff. There's the trio with Eddie Gomez and Paul Motion, and then some, like that quartet he had with Dewey Redman and stuff. There's, when it comes to Keith Jarrett, there's like less bands. But with
Right.
Korea, like, holy shit, dude. So I took my father-in-law to a record shop the other day, and just by chance he picked up a copy of the acoustic band. And he's like, I own this on cassette. So I bought it for him, whatever, like used CD store or something. And we're listening to it on the way home, and I totally forgot about the electric band. Like, there's Return to Forever, and then there's the electric band, and those are two separate eras of Chick Corea's of his career. Like, there is a significant amount of time before
Never
he,
mind.
like, yeah, it's just like, like there was a whole other band, and I totally forgot about him.
And not only that, I was thinking about this too. You say about Return to Forever. There were 3 or 4 Return to Forever bands on their own. Return to
Right.
Forever was more of a concept than a band. And so, like, the first iteration of Return to Forever with Flora and Erto was life changing for me when I heard that. I think maybe my senior year in high school. Like, I that was like something that I'd never heard before. Like, it combined the funkiness with like the light, uh, the light sound, and sort of showcased Chick's sense of humor in a way in his playing, and
Mm.
it was really something else. And so then when I bought, like, I used to I I used to, like, walk down to the record store in town. Like, literally, we had a like just down the street we had a record store, and I bought Romantic Warrior, and I expected it to sound like, Light as a Feather, and I said, what is this, and that just kept happening, just with one band, and you never knew what you're going to get. And I maybe 2 years ago was when I finally feel like I've listened to just about all of the Return to Forever. And if you've ever heard of I think it came out in 1977, it was the Music Magic lineup of Return to Forever, and it was
Uh,
basically a whole new
Maybe.
band entirely.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Um,
Was that isn't
yep.
isn't that like a bigger band, quote unquote? I feel like
Yes. Yep.
there's like more instruments, right?
Oh yeah, lots of people that I couldn't name right now. Mostly a lot of, like, sort of more like session players, or that are like on the bridging the classical jazz
Yeah.
uh session
Fusion
guys,
guys,
especially.
fusion guys that come from the classical field.
right, especially as horn players. Lots of interesting horn players that you might
Yeah.
recognize the names of, but aren't like, isn't someone that is super well known jazz musician. But
Sure.
just
Sure.
the arrangements in that album, it's a live concert. I think it's like 4 discs or something. And I mean, not everything is the best, but it's just a unique sound that I never heard from Return to Forever at all. And to know about the band for 20 years and then all of a sudden hear something new just a year or two ago that I hadn't heard before was really eye-opening,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or ear opening.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Light as a Feather was probably the first one, and then the second one I heard was Romantic Warrior, and I heard it. I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, I heard Romantic Warrior on the way down to the Blue Note to see Elvin Jones play with Michael Brecker, like my freshman year of college, and I
Well, that's something you can't do anymore,
right.
unfortunately. That's absolutely what a story.
Yeah, man, the thing is that like those early trips to the city to catch a show, I mean, they blend in so much. We used to go catch Wayne Krantz play a lot. That's for a whole other conversation. But I remember yeah, that was the first time I heard Romantic Warrior and really digging it. Actually, I was kind of like, when it came to like, that kind of like few, like I like Bitches Brew, because you got the trumpet. And I'm a huge Miles fan and that sort of thing. But like the non-horn focused fusion, I really didn't give it too much attention to, because I felt like it. Two things. One, I felt like they played a lot of notes and it was like overwhelming, but also it sounded too much like prog rock to me. And nothing against prog rock, but in high school, some of my best friends were, they were into, we all played in the big band together and they were into like Dream Theater. So there was a lot of like scenes from a memory being played when we were all hanging out. So I was just like, it was too similar and I hated it. But I remember liking Romantic Warrior pretty well. I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Hymn of the Galaxy or what is that one? Hymn of
Yep.
the Hymn of the
Right.
Ninth Galaxy or something. Is that what it's called? I'm
I
looking.
think just Hymn of the Galaxy, but yep.
Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy. I was
Oh,
off.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I really like this one because I think some of the no, maybe it's not this one. I can't see now. I got to go back and listen to all these records because I really love Crystal Silence with Gary Burton, and
Mm-hmm.
there's some Return to Forever tunes on that. So I can't remember which one's which. Maybe it's the very first Return to Forever album I'm thinking of, which I do love. The one with
Yeah.
shit. What's I'm looking it up again because I can never keep track of
Well, Crystal Silence is a song that was on the first Return to Forever album and then became one of the songs that Gary Burton and Chick played all the time. So
right. Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. So it's the first. In case anyone noticed, and it got picked up, but I typed return, and the first thing that showed up on Spotify was of the Mac, and I thought I hit X, but instead I hit play. So if anyone caught that, I definitely played Return of the Mac for a second there. Yeah, it's the song Return to Forever, Crystal Silence, and and La Fiesta. So, yeah. I really liked this one, and um but yeah, Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy I remember liking too. There's a tune called Vulcan something, Vulcan Worlds, I believe. Maybe that's the name of the album. I need to get better at this, but the thing is when you improvise these conversations, you don't realize that you're gonna start looking up stuff. Yes, the album is called Where Have I Known You Before. I remember.
oh yeah,
I believe I like this one. Ooh, and it's got.
I think that one was the one.
Yeah.
That was the one. The first Return to Forever after the Airto Flora period.
Oh, okay, yeah, because these dates are not correct. So, but I'll have to check. Yeah, I think you're right. I think where have I known you before is the first one with like the rock band version, of Return to Forever. What are some of your what are your favorites?
Well, much the same. I really have to kind of echo what you were saying. Um, although a Romantic Warrior is a classic, and some of the ones that came after that were, which was when the guitarist Al Di Meola was part of the band. But
Yeah.
I was a little overwhelmed with how many notes that he played. And so that took a little bit of getting used to at first. Eventually I did, just by getting into his own music, although confess I don't listen to him as much anymore. But the original rock band of Return to Forever had a guitarist named Bill Connors, whose playing was a little more lyrical and more horn-like, I would say.
Oh, okay.
So that was something that I was a little more, I felt like I got it a little bit more at the time, rather than just hearing, um, you know, blazing solos at,
Right.
30-second notes just pouring down.
Yeah. 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 I say no more. I gotcha. But
So
oh, go ahead.
so as far as that period of Chick goes in Return to Forever, I mean, I just got to say, really light as a feather, which came out of the Stan Getz album when Chick was in Stan Getz's band.
Right. Right. Captain Marvel.
And I think it was Captain Marvel, right? And was it Tony Williams that was on that one?
I think it's Jack DeJohnette, if I'm not mistaken, but you might be right. You might be
Okay.
right. It's kind of it's
Uh,
certainly one or the other because um like there's this record in particular, and then there's a bunch of albums by Charles Lloyd, and the rhythm sections are fucking slamming. So it's like, let's see.
mhm.
Yes, you're right. It is. So Captain Marvel is Chick Corea, Stanley Clark, Airto, and Tony Williams. And that, but what I was confusing it with was there's a bunch of Charles Lloyd albums where the rhythm section is Keith Jarrett, Cecil McBee, and Jack DeJohnette. And it's just like, and
Right.
I'm not the biggest like Charles Lloyd fan, but man, like the rhythms, it's like pre-Miles, these guys. So it's like you just gotta listen to it.
That's for sure. And yeah, so it's funny how like just talking about this, and that was one of the ways that people often say, like, how do you get into so many different styles or so many different individuals, but I'm probably preaching to the choir here, because most of the people that are listening to this would do the same thing, but it's all about finding that one name and then seeing who else they played with and finding that other name and making those connections. And so in the beginning it was like, wow, that's crazy that all of these people played together. But now that we kind of take a step back, we see that it really is a small world.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't it's one of those things where it's like I think one of the most enjoyable parts about being a jazz musician and a jazz fan is being able to look up these albums and see who played with who. So for me, anyone who like could snicker at it, I really like. It's like fuck off. It's like it's fun, man. It's like, so a lot of people love the album Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, right? And that's with Miroslav Vitus and Roy Haynes and Chick, and they were a famous trio. And that album is incredible. Well, one of the tunes on that album is let me get it here because I don't want to say it wrong. Samba Yantra. It's on Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, but it's also on The Creeper by Donald Byrd. Check out this band. Donald Byrd on trumpet, Sonny Red on alto sax, Pepper Adams on baritone sax. Here's the rhythm section: Chick Corea, Miroslav Vitus, and Mickey Roker. And like, how cool is that? And they play that same tune. So now you're getting a version of that tune, with horns, and you're getting it as a trio. That's what I love about this music. I think the most, in terms of a song, in terms of loving jazz songs. I love that for the most part, you can find different versions of the same song. And of course, and I'm not talking about like the millions of versions of Autumn Leaves you can find. I'm talking about like clearly Chick Corea was writing tunes and he was bringing them to sessions. Like Donald Byrd, I didn't know him. I don't know him, so I can't say, but I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Byrd was like, Chick, you're on the session and I heard you're a composer. Bring something to the rehearsal. Let's try it out. And he brought Samba Yantra. Or maybe Donald Byrd heard Captain Marvel and was like, I like these songs and you wrote them. Oh, what can you bring to this session? That's what I love about this music so much, because it's just, you get all these different tunes. Like, you check out the Blue Mitchell albums that Chick Corea is on. You got Chick Corea with Al Foster in the mid 60s, and you get Chick's tune. And I believe that shows up on the very Tones for Jones Bones, that first solo album he did. I think that shows up there, or one of those tunes. And that's hit, man. I fucking love that stuff. I love it so much.
And to the outside observer who might think of music as being like, the seminal version is the original recorded version by the original band or the original artist, and then everything else after that is a cover. But this is really different than that. This is more of people coming together to serve the purpose of the music, not their individual artistic egos. Really, it's all about taking a tune and making music out of with who you have, and not just making a cover version of what has already been.
Yeah, it's more about the interpretations of the music, as opposed to like, just I'm gonna play this because it's a hit. It's more like because there's not as that many jazz hits, so therefore therefore it seems like that could be the motivation behind it. Playing a tune, especially in a different format. You go from a trio to a quintet or sextet, you're going to have a different sound. You're going to have a different approach to the tune than if you did, in the other band. Speaking of trios, a lot of people, like I said, love Now He Sings, Now He Sobs. I have to say one of my personal favorites is Further Explorations. Are you familiar with that one?
I haven't listened to it for a long time, but I did listen to it a while ago. So,
that's okay.
What are your takes on it?
What sure, no problem. No, it's more of a Bill Evans slight Thelonious Monk, but mostly Bill Evans like tribute album. So you got Eddie Gomez and Paul Motion or the rhythm section, and they're playing tunes like Gloria Step and Periscope and Alice in Wonderland, and these Bill Evans trio tunes from the 50s. This record, I believe, I think it's from the mid 70s. But then you also get Little Rudy Tooty, which is a Monk tune. You get Hot House, which I feel like is more like for Monk than Bill Evans. But then but also like there's a version of But Beautiful, and I believe Bill Evans recorded But Beautiful, like maybe on Everybody Digs Bill Evans, or maybe Portrait in Jazz or something. I feel like he did that tune. I don't know, man. I just love it. I've always loved Paul Motion's playing. I've talked to Jared Caddy about this before. Paul Motion is just a drummer who's drumming, and he just doesn't seem to be showing off in any way, so he comes off very musical.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I remember hearing, maybe it was on a compilation or something, or how they rebrand things. I remember hearing a lot of Chick playing several or a bunch of different Bill Evans tunes, and it had to have been from the same session. So I'll have to check that out again in its entirety. But it was probably playing on Spotify one day on a long ride, and I looked down and I said, "Oh, I got to check that out more." And then,
oh yeah,
how things can pass by sometimes. So You know,
Well, I
the
think,
blessings of technology like that, and also the curse.
of course, I feel like Chick was very vocal about being a huge fan of Bud Powell, but I also like that there's this tribute to Bill Evans as well, because I love Bud Powell. Don't get me wrong, but I also love Bill Evans, and those are two distinct piano players that could easily have influenced him based on like the history of the music. And I'm kind of glad to know that. Like if I were to find out those were his two favorite piano players, that would make me really happy, because I feel like that would also encompass a lot of what he sounds like. And that brings me to my next question. What is what is Chick Corea's playing to you? Like how would you describe it?
I would say um, melodic, playful. Um, Oftentimes, it was a showcase of his physical chops, but he never let that get in the way of making music. And I feel like he never sort of had a let me show what I can do moment, and always was serving the music and the people around him, and was always really respectful of all the situations that he was in. Um, and it's funny you mentioned like his first couple of records. Uh, his music always seemed to really grow and change, but then at the same time his playing style would change, but he was always able to sort of play the song for that song. So, for example, what was the name of the record that you were talking about before, the that had a lot of
Further further
right,
explorations.
further explorations, right? So on those sort of recordings, and sort of the more acoustic recordings of that time, you know, he didn't play like he was playing in Return to Forever. You know, he played for the song, and played for to make music, you know, not to show who Chick Corea was. But in a way, I think we get to learn who Chick Corea was in the same sense, because of that very fact.
Yeah, it makes me think of again that ride home with my father-in-law. We're listening to the acoustic band's version of Spain, and it sounds different. And my father-in-law, who used to be a drummer, he goes, "Man, Dave Weckl is just playing. He's just playing time." And I just kind of joked, and I said, "Yeah, that's because he's got like just three drums to work with. Uh, he's not playing with two bass drums and all these fucking cymbals and shit. And Chick, he's playing the piano instead of all these synths. So like, there's this different approach to this tune, which I'm trying to say is like, to back up what you said, like he played for each situation very succinctly, but you always knew it was him. And I'm glad that you said that he sounds playful to you, because that's how I would describe it. There's this dance that like his fingers do on the keyboard. I know that's super corny, but like he always made playing sound so effortless. It always just sounds so effortless. Like he just doesn't have a care in the world, just enjoying himself playing. And man, I envy that. you know?
Well, you know, and it really comes down to, I think, the epitome of playfulness. When I think of playfulness and that sort of effortless mastery that comes from his style,
Sure.
is the Light as a Feather band. And when they made Light as a Feather, and of course same band for the previous album, but more Light as a Feather, because each song was a little bit shorter and more almost pop oriented in a sense. You know, like you could just it was absolutely just electrifying to me. But you could sing every one of his solos very, very easily. Like they were so melodic,
Yeah.
and yet at the same time, like just a couple years earlier, with when he was doing the Is sessions, it was, you know, obviously still Chick Corea, but so different, you know.
Yeah. 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 And it's we're just trying to name all of his projects, but we didn't even get to the trio he had with Dave Holland and Barry Altschall, I think is how you say his last name. I can never remember it.
Yep.
And then adding Anthony Braxton in the calling it Circle.
Right.
We didn't even get to that stuff, and that's some interesting playing too, because especially with the trio, if I'm not mistaken, that the trio with Dave Holland predates the Now He Sings, Now He Sobs trio with Roy Haynes, and they are just playing like free. And if I remember correctly, in the Bob Gluck book about the Miles Davis quote unquote Lost Quintet, the band he had with Chick, DeJohnette, and Dave Holland, part of the reason why Chick and Dave Holland left the band was because they wanted to play more free. Which is so crazy, because if you listen to Miles' recordings of that era, you're like, how could you play any freer than this? Like, I got to go back and read that book, but I'm pretty certain that that's one of the reasons they gave for leaving the band.
Well, reasons you give aren't always the reasons you have, but at the same time,
true.
I think yes, we can think of Miles in his playing of that time as being free, but it is a different kind of free than when they started playing with Circle. It was more, I don't want to say more melodic, but more. When I think of Miles during that time, I think of there being more of a melodic connection, and Circle was a little more harmonically dense, perhaps, in a free sense. But,
okay. Yeah, I'm following you.
I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so hard to compare, but
Yeah.
but maybe they just really just wanted to do their own thing, and
it could have been that for sure. It's funny too, they weren't in the band for as long as some of Miles's other sidemen. However, I did appreciate that Jack DeJohnette stayed because he was a young family man, and he had a paycheck, and it's like I appreciate the seriousness of that choice, with
Yep.
having adult responsibilities, as we call them.
Oh,
holy shit, we've been talking about Chick for so long. Not that that's bad. I just want to make sure we get to some of the other things that we wanted to talk about, but we were talking about big band music, and you had said something really interesting before we started recording, is how, and man, I didn't even think about this, but like big band is how a lot of people get into jazz who eventually become jazz musicians. And it's such a duh moment for me, but it's like I didn't even really think about that too much.
Yeah, well, high school jazz experiences are so big band centric.
Yes.
And you know what you know, and you know what you're given the experience to work with, and if those are the tools that you're given at that time, especially in a time where you don't have every album and all the information in the world at your fingertips, as it was back when we were in school, it was sort of a different time. And I just knew that when I saw that band when I was like in elementary school, I said, I'm going to be in that band someday, that big band.
Yeah.
And the high school big band, and eventually it happened. And that was what really influenced me, and like you said, a lot of people. And I think especially in education, there should be more of an emphasis on small group jazz, but just for a number of circumstances that it's not feasible.
Yeah, it's funny for me
in many cases.
Yeah, for me, playing in jazz band was such a priority because for a couple of reasons that are like not related to jazz specifically. One is it gave me another excuse to play the trumpet. Like I was hungry for opportunities to play my trumpet with other people. And so if I joined jazz band, then that was it, And I remember we had a symphony orchestra, so the orchestra and the concert band, would play together, and I did it because I wanted to play the trumpet with as many people as possible. So it was always exciting for me in that regard. But also jazz band a lot of the time is like the uber band nerds are usually in jazz band. And being an uber band nerd, that meant me and my friends got to hang out and play music together. So you were with people who wanted to be there, like, and people who played in concert band. You played alto sax, so you probably know what I'm talking about. But the people like in high school concert band who were stuck, they were juniors, but they were still stuck on like third or fourth trumpet. Like they didn't want to be at band. They were just, it was like an easy credit, and they always gave the band teacher a hard time, but stuff like that. They weren't in jazz band. They never were. They weren't needed. So I like the exclusivity of it. I like the fact that like not everyone can do it, and it gave me this purpose, especially in high school, where I was like, oh, what is my identity going to be? Oh, I'm a musician, and I'm in jazz band, and jazz band helps me, with that. So I really appreciate big band in that sense, but it's interesting that in the grand scheme of things, I haven't played big band in such a long time, and I miss it. I miss playing in big band so much. And we were gonna start one, right? But I don't want to get into it because I hate talking about how the pandemic ruined everything. But the Jazz Underground was gonna start a big band, and our first gig was like 2 weeks after lockdown. End of that. But big band recordings, some of them are so pivotal to my devotion to being a jazz musician, and I don't even like listen to them much anymore, which is kind of crazy. How do you feel about big bands in your at this point in your career?
Well, my musical tastes sort of go through phases. So I'll spend a week when I listen to a lot of big band, then I'll spend, a couple months where I don't at all. But as far as, going back to um, how it was instrumental in my developing as a young musician, just the same as you, I had it. It was to me an opportunity to play piano because
Yeah.
it was the only couple groups that I was able to play piano um, in in high school because there was no piano in concert band. There's no piano in marching band. So so that was that there, and also um, I think what we spoke about earlier was my high school big band was like kind of different than most high school big bands, and in the sense that um, we were sort of modeled after the '70s Maynard Ferguson style big band, with every
Yeah, right. I wanted to talk about the 70s jazz rock big band influence. Go ahead.
so so a one of the first director at my high school had a connection to Maynard Ferguson in some way that I don't know exactly. If he subbed in his band or studied with him or something. He was a trumpet player too, and he got a lot of the original arrangements, and so we would play those in school, and we would have every instrument would have a mic in front of it. If you played a trumpet, you had a microphone in front of you. If you had a trombone, everything was mic'd up. They had the sound guy had like different effects running, and they
Whoa.
really tried to give it like that '70s sound. And I thought it was really something else at the time because um, it it wasn't what was normal for big band jazz music. So when we went to the jazz competitions, and
Oh
so to
yeah.
speak, that it was we were playing something a little bit different than the other high school playing Take the A Train.
Yeah.
So that kind of is what really kind of introduced me and made me kind of really click in with that fusion in that style of jazz from that period. so it was just a unique experience, and one that I was lucky to be able to have in a sense. And that's where I, got connected with and started learning about, Weather Report and Return to Forever, Chick Corea,
Yeah.
Herbie Hancock, because we played all of those. Anything that Maynard would have played in the '70s, we also had played. So so
Yeah.
it was a unique experience and fun.
I would be insane not to mention Maynard Ferguson's influence on me. Like sophomore, freshman, sophomore, junior year of high school. Because definitely in the early O's, newly, I'm talking 2000, 2001, 2002, Maynard he was doing a lot of high school performances with the Big Bop Nouveau band. And I remember going to Southington High School to see a concert of the band. It was the first time I saw Maynard live, only time I ever saw him live, actually. And man, I was blown away. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world, and I was obsessed with Maynard Ferguson for a long time. At that time, I was more of a lead player, so I had a pretty good range, and I could squeak out notes. So I was lead trumpet junior and senior year. So I thought, it's funny. I would, if I were in a big band now, I'd want to be fourth trumpet. I want the comfortable part, and I want to be able to solo. I want all the solos and the comfortable parts. But back then, I thought there was nothing. The first step down from godlyhood was playing lead trumpet, and playing high notes and stuff. And so Maynard was it. And it's funny. I bet Maynard is the reason why a lot of trumpet players became jazz college students in the late 90s and early 2000s because of these high school tours. There was probably an influx of trumpet players because of these concerts. And it's been a long time since I listened to him, like really long time. A lot of that shit comes off as really corny to me, but I do love it. And is that him on the Rocky soundtrack? Gonna Fly Now? Is that Maynard?
I know he did a version of it. I don't think his band did the original one.
Okay.
But I'm not positive. It could have been like, an LA studio band that did the original version or something. But
Yeah.
it was on one of his albums. And yeah, I
Right.
agree that some of his music was corny in a sense, but there was also some periods of when you heard some of the soloists that he had in his band that were really, really great at the time. I think I
Yeah.
had mentioned before this pianist Alan Zavad, who had eventually played with Frank Zappa, played with Jean-Luc Ponty, another a fusion violinist actually that I really got into in that period, um,
Mm.
and eventually taught at Berkeley himself. But yeah, great pianist right there, Alan Zavad. If you have a chance
Yeah,
to
I'm gonna
check
look
him
him
out
up
at
after
all.
this.
But
Uh oh,
but
go ahead.
his solo on La Fiesta was what really, like I said earlier, brought me into Chick. So it's funny, things come full circle like that.
So yeah, I just looked it up, and apparently Bill Conti is the did the original version of Gonna Fly Now, but prior to Rocky
Okay.
coming out, apparently on the Conquistador album by Maynard Ferguson is when he recorded Gonna Fly Now. And I'm definitely gonna cue that up. I feel like there's definitely gonna be like, it's gonna be heavy on the jazz rock, uh kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
The big band jazz rock sound is very distinct. And my high school jazz director was also really eager about bringing in charts that were like, yeah, like fusiony, big band fusion, I'll call it. And he brought in a lot of charts by a guy named Steve Slagle or Spiegel, something like that. And apparently they had gone to the University of Bridgeport together. So he knew him, and there were all the, we did all these charts. Man, I gotta contact some of these guys from high school because I know they know, especially the ones that went into music. Some really cool tunes, but man, they were funky. Just a lot of like, da 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 stuff like that. I probably quoted a tune and I don't even realize it,
Yeah.
but you know what I'm talking about? Like just like those 16th note figures you play in big band in high school. I mean, those who know,
Yep.
But do you think big band is a good way to teach kids jazz? Let me ask you that.
I think it's an important aspect, but I don't think it's something that needs to be completely, if given the opportunity and given like the schedule, and given the resources, it shouldn't be the only thing.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Um, I think it is a good idea because kids are not, even high school kids, they're not comfortable playing with less people for the most part. So
Right.
if you can, so a big band is like a third the size of your average concert band in school. A lot of kids feel exposed. So I think I think it is a good it is a good example. And if you can, have a jazz combo, you should. But it's funny, when I was student teaching, my mentor teacher managed to convince the board of ed that the marching band was a waste of time. And he dismantled the marching band and instead had he had a big band. He had concert band, big band, a combo, and a bunch of like chamber groups. I mean, these kids were playing, woodwind chamber music. And I was like, this man's a genius, because they were learning a way broader spectrum of music in the educational sense than like we do marching band until the winter concert, and then we could do other stuff. I know that's a lot of tangents right there, but but basically what I'm saying is, yes, teaching jazz band, big band is a good idea. And I feel like people should appreciate. I wish big bands would make a comeback. A lot of times they're filled with retirees. I think they should make a comeback.
Oh, sure. But it's hard enough to pay a trio or a quartet, let alone a big band. So
Yeah.
so it really comes down to those some factors, and it's really it's difficult, and that's why I was really looking forward to seeing what the New Haven Jazz Collective big band was going to be like, and experiencing that, and that hopefully that'll happen sometime. Who knows?
Oh yeah, we'll be back. Well, to answer your first point, that's because I feel like modern big bands now consist of music educators, because then you don't have to worry about the money part, which includes the Jazz Underground's big band. It was called the Elm City Big Band, by the way. And,
oh right.
Yeah, we'll make a comeback, because the way I see it, everyone in the band is pretty much a public school educator, so we should be getting vaccinated soon. So therefore, we'll be able to start gigging by the summer. So that might be the one project that actually does happen before the end of the year.
Well, I appreciate your optimism. That's a good way of putting it.
It's the only thing we can do. But listen, Andy, I gotta have you back on the show, man. It's been a blast talking to you. When I start repeating guests, I want you on, because I want to start talking about 70s jazz albums, which you and I have an affinity for. And I definitely want to just devote a show in dissecting some hip shit in the, small group stuff from the 70s. So
sounds good.
But thanks for coming on. And it's good. It's always good to talk to you, bro. I love you. So thanks so much, man.
Same here, brother.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Thanks to Andy for being on the podcast. And, if you check out my recordings, do it to just listen to Andy and his contributions to the music, because I like I said before, the tunes could not sound the way they do without his incredible musicianship and creativity, and so I thank him for that. And also, it wouldn't hurt to plug my own music once in a while, right? So, we got Bandcamp Fridays going on, and my records are on Bandcamp. So do it for Andy. If you don't want to do it for me, do it for him, because he certainly deserves the recognition. So, this has been an interesting episode because, it was like a tribute episode, for Chick Corea. I feel like so many records were left out, man, and hopefully in the show notes I'll leave a playlist of my favorite Chick Corea tunes. That's a good idea. I think I'll do that. So check it out in the show notes or on YouTube in the description. I'll put my top 10 favorite Chick Corea tunes and, see if they're the same as yours. Because like we were talking about in the interview, man, he's just one of those musicians where different people will like different stuff, and there's plenty to choose from. What am I forgetting? We don't have a Mind the Hang plan just yet, but we will. And make sure you hit that subscribe button. Before I forget, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on YouTube, leave us a review. I'm doing the best I can. Keep that in mind when you leave that review. But it does help the podcast get more exposure, and I greatly appreciate that. So, have a good weekend. Check out some good tunes on Bandcamp this Friday. And I think that'll do it for us this episode. So, this has been Mr. Millennial's Revenge. I'm your host, Nick DeMaria. This is a production of the New Haven Jazz Underground. And see you at the next episode. Thanks so much. Take care.